Welcome to In Times of Crisis, Family Matters. Today I'm with my good friend Justin Roberts, who is a Grammy-nominated kids musician and a trustee of the Recording Academy. Welcome, Justin.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Andy.
So how did you get into kids music, and tell us a little bit more about your musical journey?
So I went to Kenyon College, where you also went, for undergraduate, and I played in a band there. And upon graduating, we moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I needed a day job, and I found myself drawn towards working with kids. I'd had a little experience with that at Kenyon, and so I took a day job as a preschool teacher, started writing songs for kids, and eventually decided to make a kids album. Got some inspiration from another friend from Kenyon who was a producer in Chicago named Liam Davis, and he heard some of the songs that I'd recorded and said, hey, we should make a record. And so I made a kids record and then went to graduate school at University of Chicago in something completely different, and thought I was never going to be a children's musician. But the record took off a little bit, and I find myself 20 years later having 13 records for kids and touring the country for children and writing picture books and musicals for kids as well. So it turned into a strange music career.
And 3 Grammy nominations as well.
Yeah, 3 Grammy nominations. The first one was, I think, in 2011 for Jungle Gym, and then a few years later for Recess, and most recently for Lemonade, which was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the career path for a musician is really a challenging one, because you've got often a day gig, and your music is another part of that, and performance is a big part of how you earn your living. So tell us about the dynamics of working in the music industry.
Yeah, well, for the longest time, I worked as a preschool teacher, and then I did temporary work, alphabetizing in offices, eventually worked in IT because I got a temporary job at a publishing company in their computer department, and I became a network administrator. But I was doing all these other jobs to support being able to do music. And after the band that I was playing with in college broke up, I made this kids record, and I decided to go off to graduate school. I was going to become a professor in religious studies, and I went to the University of Chicago to study that. And then the kids' music started taking off, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do this, but if I do this, I really want it to be what I do. I don't want to work another job to support my music career. I want to actually make a living making music. And so I used a lot of the skills that I discovered at Kenyon, because I was in a singing group called the Coco Singers, and I was the president of the group one year, and I had to book tours. And then from playing in the indie band that I played in, we were booking tours and learning how to make records and make a living in some way. And so I quit my IT job at the time and finished a master's degree at University of Chicago. And then I decided to really try to do full-time music. So I booked my own tours, and I would travel anywhere, from playing in at the time, a Borders bookstore or a little festival, street festival or something, and put together a bunch of dates and play a tour, sell CDs out of my car, and, then book another one and do it again. And it eventually built up to being able to perform at, really big venues with a full band, and has been going on for quite a while. So we've played, places in Chicago like Ravinia Festival and Old Town School of Folk Music and Space in Evanston, and nationally at the Getty Museum, and we did a stint at the New Victory Theater in New York City. But it's turned into much bigger things, and now I have a booking agent who handles that stuff. But all of it, began as how do you make a living as a musician? Well, you play concerts and you sell merchandise. And so that's sort of been the method. And I was lucky enough that when I started doing the kids' music, I've managed to not have any other day jobs aside from sometimes doing things in schools, songwriting assemblies and things like that. And then writing kids' books and doing other things. But managed to have a freelance career making music and art.
So in an already difficult industry, obviously this COVID-19 crisis has stopped all live performance, in concert gatherings. And that on top of the digitalization of music, and not CDs aren't what they were.
Yeah.
So what's the impact of COVID-19 on musicians, and how's that impacting everybody?
Well, it's been really, really tough. All of my good friends are musicians, and my wife, Anna, is a classical musician. And, within a couple of weeks, we had just months of gigs canceled one after another. And the touring is primarily how I make my living, and being with other people and connecting with other people in person is what a live musician thrives on, just spiritually as well as economically. So it's been really hard to try to figure out what the future is. But I'm sure that's true of people in other industries and the entire economy. So I feel like we're in this together in a way. But yeah, musicians, I think, have a particular problem in that, with digital music being the way that people consume music now, that avenue of making a living has kind of dried up. That used to be primarily how I had made my living, was going on tour and selling music. But with this situation, you're kind of really relying on the live performances and people buying T-shirts and things like that at shows to make a living. And when you can't perform and can't sell merchandise on the road, it makes it really hard.
Mm-hmm. So how is the music industry dealing with this crisis?
Well, it's been, I'm very involved with the Recording Academy. I've been on the Chicago board for many years and am now a national trustee. And we have an advocacy arm that does work for musicians in Washington, D.C. We were a big part of helping the Music Modernization Act to get passed a couple years ago. And more recently, they've really immediately, got on the bandwagon of figuring out how to make sure that musicians and freelance, especially freelance musicians, independent musicians, would have some relief in the packages that the government was planning to give to, people who are employed and have jobs and things like that. And when you're a freelancer, you don't have that sort of regular income. You make a living, in fits and spurts. And so I think they got on it really early and made sure they got a lot of different organizations together to fight for the same thing, and not just music groups, but other arts groups, the film industry, and other people that have a lot of gigging people working in their industry. And they all got together and started pushing the same message out, that we need to make sure that freelance artists are part of this bill, that if you can, show that you have lost income as a result of this epidemic, that you can find some relief in various ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be a huge help to people. Still a scary situation, because I think as maybe we loosen up our quarantine, months down the road, I feel like large events are going to be the last thing to come back, and that's what musicians, need for concerts and things like that. So, but I think the Recording Academy's done great stuff. They have a website that they put together with some of these other industries. They kind of all got together, the BMIs and ASCAPs of the world, and all of the various entities that support musicians and other artists. And they put together this musiccovidrelief.com, where you can go and figure out, how you can apply for various kinds of funding. If you're a small business, like a studio owner, and you have salaried employees, you can apply for small business loans and grants through the SBA. And if you're an independent musician, you can also apply for certain things through that. And once the relief money starts coming in from the government, they're going to have information on that there as well. So that's a great resource for musicians to figure out how to navigate this path.
And, you could argue that musicians are the original gig economy.
Yeah, right.
But so for people who want to give back and help musicians who are in need, because I'm sure that there are many musicians who are going to be in need, at this
Yes.
point. How can people help people in need?
I think a great way is supporting Music Cares, which is an organization, the Recording Academy. It's an arm of the Recording Academy, but it's an organization that's been helping musicians for many, many years, millions and millions of dollars being given out for things like alcohol and drug addiction, but also when there's, the tornado in Nashville recently, Music Cares was there to provide support for musicians who needed help. You don't have to be a member of the Recording Academy. You just have to be a full-time musician. We've had things where, somebody gets in an accident and they don't have health insurance, and Music Cares can help them out. Or a musician has their tour canceled outside of the COVID situation. Sometimes that happens, and you need support to pay your rent, and Music Cares can help in those kinds of situations. And so for this, they've put together a fund that I believe Music Cares put $1 million in, and the Recording Academy did as well. And then other organizations, some of the streaming services and some of the songwriting entities have put in money to this fund. And you can get immediate relief if you're a musician and, can prove you're a professional musician. You don't have to be a member of the Recording Academy, and they can help pay your rent or mortgage and provide you funding, within a week or two of applying. So that's really great.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And if people give to that fund, it's only going to help make sure that doesn't dry up, because I'm sure it will go quickly in this situation.
Yeah. So how are you coping in the midst of all this, and how are you keeping busy now that you can't be on the road and in front of kids?
Yeah. So, it was a strange couple days when I had to, call my band members and say, hey, these gigs aren't happening. And my wife, Anna, was like, oh my gosh, another thing got canceled. And this event I was supposed to play in Kalamazoo in 2 weeks is no longer happening. And so we were all kind of at a loss as to how to go on doing what we do. And the one thing I kept thinking about when schools were canceled and kids were stuck at home was, what are parents going to do all day with their kids? And personally, I don't really want them sitting in front of a screen. I have a 18-month-old son, and we try to avoid having him sit in front of screens too often. So I thought maybe I would do something where I could create a bunch of craft projects and things for parents and families to do together offline. But I also do a stream Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10:30 a.m. On Facebook Live, and I do an occasional live concert as well on other days. But on those Monday, Wednesday, Friday days, I do things like craft projects. I do a cooking segment where I cook something and show kids how to make something with their families. So recently I made homemade pizza dough, and I got all these pictures of people making pizzas together, which was really cool. And on Fridays, I do this thing called a musical scavenger hunt, where I take 4 songs that I love from the history of American or music in general, popular music, and I ask questions about the songs. And so it forces kids to sit down and listen to these songs. And it might be, the Zombies and Sam Cooke and Fountains of Wayne and The Who or whatever it is. And each one has a question, and then they draw pictures, and they can download this template that has space for you to fill out the different answers. And it's been really awesome and hilarious, getting kids to listen to Stevie Wonder, Love's in Need of Love Today. And, I can just pick songs that I like and introduce them to families. And then also on Friday, I do a musical lesson where I do pretty simple sheet music of chords and the melody, and then teach on ukulele and guitar the song. And I've gotten these videos of a mother and a son playing on clarinet and guitar, Willie Was a Whale, and they're just together making music, or pictures of kids playing ukulele along with me while I'm doing the lesson. And that's really awesome. So trying to do creative things with kids and not just have them looking at a screen, but hopefully making things and doing things and learning and keeping inspired and being together as a family. So that's really helped me fill my time. It isn't necessarily any kind of substitution for my career, but it is a wonderful way to connect to people. And I look forward to it, and I get to see the same people online, and a lot of people sending me notes about how much it's helping them through the process. And that means a lot to me.
It's an amazing gift to give people in this time of need. And
Yeah. It's a gift to me too, though. That's the fun thing about it. I mean, I guess that's like most giving, but like,
mhm.
I, I'm getting as much back as I'm giving out, I'm sure, if not a lot more, but I'm happy it's meaning something to people. And yeah, it's been fun. And it's also connected me with even fans from way back, partly because everyone's home. So I'm getting notes from like, parents with 16-year-olds, and they're like, we just discovered your CDs in the closet, and we listened to them again, started dancing around the house, and just had an amazing time. So that's been cool.
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us, and I'll be making a donation to Music Cares in your honor.
Awesome. Thank you. That would be wonderful.
Trying to help out wherever we can. We're, as you said, we're all in this together, and thank you for the gift of music that you're giving people every day.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Great talking with you.
Thanks.